I guess it's become a little bit of an anticlimax when something spectacular doesn't happen in the first 10 seconds. But I've never actually seen the show Billions. But
Nor have I. But was sort of interesting. I will do some inside baseball here. When we do these shows, we're now doing basically 2 a week, and this is our 152nd show. Fortunately, they pump out movies every week, and yeah. I wish some of them were good, but there are a lot of posters out there. And I won't say exactly where, but one morning I was looking at the second-story window on 6th Avenue, and I see this bus go by that says Billions. And I'm thinking, that's interesting, and it has this language on top of it. And then another bus goes by with the same, and it says, leave them with nothing. And I'm like, this is awesome. What is this show?
I remember seeing an ad for it and being pretty interested in it, but I don't know, is it on Showtime or something?
Yeah, this will be the 4th season of this, and supposedly it's about machinations of billionaires and investors and this and that. But I think the team that has been in power, we didn't put Bush people in here, but the team that's been in power really since about 1989, has racked up, I checked the numbers actually, I decided not to do a table because I know how much we like numbers, but going back to 1989, the national, federal and state total debt has gone from about 2 trillion to 22 trillion with this team. So when we say leave them with nothing, these people who swan around the world and expect to be praised and only travel private jet class at the top of the world, have racked up, just in this country alone, $20 trillion of extra debt. Most of these people were poor when they got into politics. Virtually all of them are rich now. They never explain. The forms are on purpose doctored, the disclosure forms while you're a politician, so that you really don't have to explain how rich you were when you started and how rich you are. The rule, they say, yeah, we'll have a rigorous program. Just let us design the rules. There's the opposite of what you should need here.
Right.
And I think we'll see. History plays out, and we'll have to watch and see how President Trump does here. He certainly faces dread opposition, but it could just take a billionaire, multi-billionaire,
millionaires and billionaires.
Yeah, to go into this and say, nah, it's enough of this crap. Because what I see happening in this recent 2-year exercise where we both, I think, were in the audience and listened to Greg Jarrett speak, who was a very smart guy. I mean, a large number of people were on the idea that this whole Russian collusion, delusion was a hoax a long time ago. And then the Weisenheimers, who wrote 500,000 stories in the press, you're just a conspiracy.
Forget about the tweets.
You're a conspiracy theorist. I'm a conspiracy. What do you know? There's all this classified information. I can't share the truth with you. We know that he's really, And I think the mainstream American and international public is now looking at these wankers for what they are. They're deluded idiots in the main.
I think we're still in the process of people sorting it out, right? It takes a few days, this notion of Russia hacking, and I mean, they're still saying Russia hacked, but there has never been any evidence establishing that.
Right.
They say it's a fact, but you got to go back to CrowdStrike. They're the ones who said that Russia hacked. No evidence of Russia hacking. Bill Binney says they didn't hack.
Right. But even flying higher above the earth and not getting so much into the tactical details, just saying, are we really better off as a nation in 2019 than we were in 1989?
No.
And the answer is hell no.
Yeah.
I mean, we're absolutely not better off.
Yeah.
And these improvements in technology, simplistically put, that were supposed to make us all better, what we've done willingly in this country and around the world is say, okay, we're going to give to Facebook and give to Google and give to Twitter a whole bunch of enormously valuable information about our buying interests, our preferences, our daily habits, our whereabouts, and we're going to let these companies who are opaque as hell, whose motives are suspect, who could be tied into the government, various governments, we're going to let the people and the investors behind these companies monetize our information for their benefit.
Yeah.
And then as they proceed to destroy competition at Amazon, to destroy lower level, middle level jobs via software improvements and outsourcing, as they proceed to do all that, we're then going to winnow this down so there are 8 or 10 choke points. The big banks, the big social media companies, the big media companies, the big educational institutions, and we'll control those choke points so that we can take any opponent and basically strip them of social media presence, take them all out of financial transactions, deny them credit, close their bank account, get 2,500 professors to in unison, say that your idea is stupid, and they'll use the same argument, and you'll be saying, well, wait, this is one guy saying one thing and 2,500 professors another. And the real rub of it was, until Donald Trump came along, that we fell for this idea that there was a difference between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. It's total rubbish. It's the same bunch of people. They have these shows every 2 years of election, and then the people behind the scenes make sure that things just happen the way they want it to happen. The lobbyists get what they want. The political donors get what they want. The politicians are on purpose made to be too busy to actually do anything correctly. In my life, not that I'm an example for anybody, but just in my personal experience, when I try to do more than, let's say, 8 business projects at once, and there are times when I've done many more than 8, it's virtually impossible. So I much prefer, and even with a lot of help.
8 sounds like a lot.
Well, if you're running something, you've got 25, 30 people, you're going to be working on a lot. So, but if in this new life, since 2007, I've just picked, big things to do one by one and get them done. Take, however long it takes on GE, get it done. However long it takes on Clinton Foundation, get it done. That's what these idiots in government should be doing. We don't need some person on the right to stand up and say our party platform consists of 1,189 priorities. Everything from cat food to what kind of missiles we're going to shoot around the world. We're spending way too much money. And there's a simple approach. Whatever you spent last year, next year you're going to spend 80% of that, because we need the other 20% to pay down our debt.
Right.
None of these new initiatives, none of these new plans, none of that. We got to trim the size of government. So, here to just see the number of people, you read about in the press, some of them I know, you know them, who started with nothing, and here's Chelsea Clinton, who doesn't care about money anymore. Yeah. Of course not. Why should she care about money? She just goes to her laundromat and says, Exactly. I put it in order for $1 billion a month ago. Can I please have my $1 billion all clean and shiny and whatever? Yeah. You wouldn't care about money if you could do that.
No, definitely not. With regard to 8 projects at once, Charles, apparently, or at least my experience yesterday, everybody in Congress is too busy and not here right now.
Right, of course.
Every one of their assistants not available. Can't talk to you.
Well, but that's
why don't you leave a message and we'll forward it. I was like, I'm here because none of the messages have been answered.
Right. Well, that's by design. And they purposely keep all of these people in Congress too busy to do anything. I don't believe
that. They're busy having cocktails or walking around doing nothing.
No, the system is set up so that you're trying to be a subcommittee chair or a chair of something, and to do that, you've got to serve on different committees, and you've got to scratch somebody's back to get, and I've listened to people who've been in Congress shortly explain how it works. They keep you really, really busy. You're running around doing all sorts of stuff. You've got stuff to do in D.C. and around D.C. You got stuff to do in your home district. You got your campaign coming up every 2 years if you're congressman. Then you got your committee work. Then you got your personal life, and you got your mistress, and you got your board.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, you got to get out of here at 3 and have a martini
exactly.
at 5.
and then you've got all these starry-eyed people who come down, like AOC, who come down to Washington D.C. and say, because I won 30,000 votes or whatever the number was, I think what I'm going to do is just totally reinvent the universe. Yeah. Throw out everything that's known, and I'll start over again. Yeah.
And she knows nothing. I'm glad you brought up AOC, Charles. There was a Green New Deal press conference in front of the Capitol building yesterday, and I stopped at that, and maybe people saw it this morning. I put up the video. I was speaking with Kirsten Gillibrand, asking her about, John Brennan's speech to the Council on Foreign Relations, who I think you probably know I don't trust. And he was talking about how interested he is in aerosolized aluminum injection, whereby literally aluminum dust is sprayed into the ionosphere I believe, to make it more conductive, so things like radar and different electronic signals can pass through it more effectively. But I basically asked Senator Gillibrand why the Green New Deal is so focused on carbon dioxide, which causes photosynthesis in trees and plants and all that, or maybe
photosynthesis. That sounds dangerous.
Maybe that's wrong, but plants need it to live, and we don't know what the health effects of aerosolized aluminum are. And she just basically, wouldn't. She before I could even finish what I was saying, she said, "I'll look into it." I was like, "Let me finish." She just walked away. So she wasn't too. She was too busy to even talk to me.
Well, did you bring your interpreter?
What do you mean, English to stupid? Or?
Exactly, English to dumbass.
Exactly. I did not have that with me, but I think there's an app for that, Charles. Get that app. Oh, and then the other interesting thing is, David Hawkins has been telling me quite a bit about Bernardine Dorn and Bill Ayers and the Weather Underground in Chicago, and apparently Roseanne Barr is pretty interested in that. She put up a video a little earlier today where she was watching David Hawkins and I on YouTube.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting. I mean, I'd be curious to know. I think Roseanne is from Chicago, right?
I have no clue.
Is a threat to the planet, right?
Let's see what
You're
she says
breathing
about
in at
this.
380 parts per million. So all of these, greenies and so on, they're exactly the same biological makeup. I'm not sure that extends.
I love
to,
that he referenced Chicago, Bill Ayers,
We're all
and Bernadette.
members of the mammal
I'm
family,
very
right?
interested
So we're
in what
breathing
was
out.
going on with the Weather Underground, and Bill Ayers and Bernadine Dorn are on faculty at the University of Illinois in Chicago and Northwestern University. They should be behind bars. They're unhinged terrorists.
Yeah, and what we saw, interesting you brought up Chicago, I mean, what we saw in the last 24 hours with this Jussie Smollett
Exactly.
message to the rest of the world, which I think was a really ominous message. It's like, you think Donald Trump is going to be in power forever? That's not what's going to happen. At some point, the Obamas are coming back to power, and when that happens, if you're on the wrong side of the Obamas, you get Smolletted or Jussied or whatever it is. I mean, if they don't like you, you go into the deepest, darkest corners of the prison with no, the FBI is going to raid your house and all that kind of stuff. And if you're a friend, if you play along, you pay to play.
Do whatever you want,
Do it.
and even if the cops say you're going to jail, they...
Right. But the one thing that I did find interesting about the reaction, and maybe it's all a big stage play, is that Rahm Emanuel and the Chicago police chief, and even David Axelrod, who are all staunch Chicago people, theoretical, at least Emanuel and Axelrod were Obama allies. They sharply criticized.
I don't know if I trust Rahm Emanuel, but I think the police are going to push. They were saying they want a federal investigation. That would be quite interesting.
They already put his file, the confidential file, online. Police did. I mean, I do think it's awful, it's horrible to do what was alleged, but it's also, at some levels, it's even worse to falsely accuse somebody of something like that.
Because it puts future victims at risk of not being believed.
Right.
He's stolen the right to be believed from someone.
And he's not it's a very sympathetic character, actually.
No.
When you get into it, it turns out, I believe he was raised, there are articles he was raised by a communist mother, and I mean, he's not, when he used this thing, I'm doing this because my mother raised a good son. Yeah, right.
Well, I mean, I hadn't heard that about a communist mother, but I mean, and again, it comes back to what is up with Chicago communists? I didn't really know that was such a thing, but of course, this guy, he hangs out with Barack Obama, which, that seems like something that communists like to do, and that would make sense.
It's funny you should mention that as well. I was going through my notes. I've got extensive notes on many aspects of the Clinton Foundation. I was focused on the period March 23rd, 2004 and before, and I came across a lot of work I'd done on the Partners in Health, and Paul Farmer, who some say, Chelsea, the world's expert on diarrhea, says that Paul Farmer is a wonderful human being, Albert Schweitzer, et cetera. But in my notes, I came across somebody who said he's basically a communist, Paul Farmer. And he started saying, well, wait a second. Communists, they're communists everywhere.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that definitely did happen was the generation of that graduated college or could have graduated college in 68, 69, to about the time I graduated, 78, 80, many of the people who elected to stay in academia are hard left, and probably communists. Many.
Yes.
I mean, and they really believe, I remember listening to people after communism manifestly blew up across Eastern Europe and Soviet Union, and you listen to these academics say, well, it didn't work there. Right. But it'll work here. So.
Well, with that, why don't we dive into the slides?
Sure. So, the actual thing that I finally feel we have, as Americans, as people around the world, we have an absolute right to stand up and say, we're not going to take this shit anymore. We are not going to take, yet another, the $93 trillion Green New Deal, or even $1 trillion new imperative, or Medicare for all, or, 3 homes for all, or whatever else Bernie Sanders is going to come up. And, Beto O'Rourke should be locked up in a loony bin. I mean, that guy is, I hope he's out there 24/7 through the primaries. I hope he carries it to the wire. And in the end, it's between him and who knows what. But the people, the political class down in Washington, D.C. have spent too much, not only of our money and our children's money, of our grandchildren's money, they've just got to stop it. They don't know what they're doing. And it's clear from the trail here that they don't know what they're doing. You mentioned, you were talking about California earlier, but this Eric Swalwell.
He was rolling with the Iwans.
Well, not only that, he was on Martha McCallum last night, and it's apparently it's humor that he, with its dead earnest, straight face, this Swalwell character is saying there is absolutely, the evidence is in. Trump is a Russian agent. It's obvious from the evidence.
Yeah.
He's still saying that.
This guy's so stupid.
Right? But he comes across, he's one of these guys who can say things credibly, and he says them, he's a former prosecutor, he says it credibly, he's a lawyer, now he's in Congress, and he's maybe going to run for president.
No way.
That's what he said.
We'll let him run, but he's not going to win.
He and Avenatti, it'll be a great team.
Oh,
Avenatti.
Wow. Yeah, that guy. He's going to be president of Cell Block D.
Yeah, I know. I know. So we're in a place now, I think, where we've been spared, and whether Mueller was doing truly a good deed or out to get Trump with that weaselly analysis of obstruction of justice, we're in a place now where Donald Trump has limited runway to get the job done. Yeah. I mean, you can't, and I mean, he is working hard, he's working for free. I'm not trying to get him to work harder, but
he never looks fatigued, which is amazing.
But he's taken a lot of punishment in his first 2 years, 2+ years, and now's the time to punch really hard. I gather he's going to be on Hannity tonight at 9 p.m. And there's going to be a raucous rally in Michigan tomorrow at 7 p.m. I think Eastern time, might be Central time. But to get this job across the line, we need to see indictments about the Clinton Foundation and all these related charity frauds. We need to see true,
and not QAnon, hidden indictment, real people
press
getting
releases,
perp walked and arrested and on TV in court.
Right. And the momentum seems to be going the right way. I take the point. I imagine that his top lawyers were saying, "Listen, you're in the clear on the hoax thing, but where you can get trapped is on obstruction of justice. So we've got to be very careful."
Well, wait a minute. But I thought Giuliani and Sekulow were saying that if there's no underlying crime, there can't be.
No, I'm saying until Mueller rendered his decision, which he only did, right? They had to be very careful about creating fodder for the charge that what Trump was doing by going after the Clinton Foundation or this and that might be obstructing justice. And the reason that's really amusing to me is that if you look at the two things, you say, well, let's think about that for a second. We have abundant evidence in this, our 150-second, 2-hour show, abundant evidence of rampant fraud and corruption going all the way back to October 23rd, 1997, that Rosenstein, Mueller, and Comey were investigating and couldn't see because for not good reasons. Either they're super stupid, which I don't think they are, or they were co-opted, which I think they were. And so on the one hand, you have the public record, which we deal in, that's what we traffic in. The public record, we help you analyze it. And then we have this investigation launched by Rosenstein where he selects Mueller to impede Donald Trump, in my view, and his team from getting to the heart of this Clinton Foundation fraud. I mean, a real substance to the charge that the Clintons and their allies, their professional advisors, the donor class, were committing charity fraud and were engaged in pay-for-play corruption. You have massive evidence of that. And that, they just resist studying that. But then they say it's okay for us to mount an investigation and have 500,000 articles written around the world and have, only partisan hack Democrats, all these leaks. That's okay. But it's not okay for the president to say, why don't we look at the Clinton Foundation? I mean, it's just that it's ridiculous.
Well, the whole Russia investigation itself is almost an obstruction of justice because it's prevented the investigation into the actual injustice.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And another thing, not to pick on, let's say, not to pick on the Bahamas, because I happen to love the Bahamas. It's not like we were, for the last 2 years that everyone in the in crowd, the it girls and boys and pundits and Brookings people and Times and all those people it was not like they were picking on the Bahamas and say, those evil Bahamians, you can't trust them, they're awful. They've been picking on the Russians, and they have the largest, I believe in number, the largest fleet of nuclear missiles on the planet, right? And I love the Bahamas. Maybe if you're saying this, they would never let me go back there, but that's about all you're going to suffer if you piss the Bahamians off. I mean, if you piss off the Russians to a point,
right?
There could be some real harm done. And the
well,
notion
certainly hurts diplomatic relations. What's going on? It made it impossible for Trump to meet with Putin for months. Didn't it?
Well, but and we think about it for a second. It's okay, and not to whoop up on China, but it's okay for the Chinese to imprison a rumored 1 to 2 million Muslims.
China did that?
Oh, they're doing it right now in prison camps. There's this minority group that they don't like. They pronounce it Uyghurs, but it's spelled Uigyurs, so something like that. And China is a repressive country that certainly is making ever more aggressive moves against the United States of America. And there's an important difference. I mean, I know these people are not good with numbers, but there are about 1.3 billion Chinese people, and there are only 150 million, less than that, Russians. So, it seemed to me that if you're looking for people to kind of like get over your differences, you'd say, well, Russia, you're close to us.
They've convinced an entire generation of Americans that Russia is the enemy. I mean, this is a country that we should be involved in trade with and, right. Exchange of ideas and things like that.
Well, not to mention, some of if you go back into history, forget the present, just go back into history, some of the most impressive mathematical and scientific advances have come from Russian science people. What are we weak in this country? At least we're not very good at teaching science and technical matters, and there's a limited number of people who are enjoying it, but we got real issues in this country. And it would seem to me that there are natural places in which, once we get rid of these people like Crystal and the other ones who are, bomb Russia, there's this problem. China did that, let's bomb Russia. That's right.
Are you going to donate a wing to the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez School of Government, Charles?
Oh, no. I don't think that. I will not be doing that.
It would be a left wing.
So it's really time, and I think, did I mention already the Rush thing?
Well, you said something to me about it, but before we went on.
Yeah, so I believe we're seeing more signs in the media that credible people who really are not drive-by members of the media, but people who really focus on facts, are beginning to see what we've been talking about for a long time, and that is that if you really want to discipline the swamp, you'll focus on these charity frauds. You'll expose their full extent. I'm gratified to see what's happening with the Southern Poverty Law Center. I'm gratified to see what's happening with the higher education scam. And it's now coming more into the public domain. Everyone has suspected now for several years that the Clinton Foundation is an actual straight-up fraud. So let's hope that things move swiftly through in the next 3 months, because I think we need to get these indictments out there, move these investigations along, get them into the public mind, let them play out, because people will defend themselves. That's going to take time. and have it be fully resolved well before the election.
Yeah. Now, Charles, forgive me, I haven't had a chance to go through the slides before we began, but will you be discussing that?
We could talk about it now if you like. I mean, this
Because
is
I
really...
think this is definitely on par with what you were just talking
Right.
about, as far as, who are the craziest of the crazy.
Yeah, I mean, this one is really stupid. Natasha Bertrand, I think I may have an article, or I may have tweeted an article out. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, I think definitely the all-time heavyweight champ has got to be Rachel Maddow.
Yeah, it would be amusing if there are people with spare time. You take the Trump steamroller, and there's been the Trump train, and those various cartoon things where they'll have a cartoon character and it's puffed out in 3D, and then the steamroller comes over them, and then
and they're flat.
And then they're flat, and they come off the pavement,
yeah.
and they come down.
Right.
It'd be pretty funny to do that with each of these people.
Yeah, I mean, how does this work? You vote, and then,
You pick it.
Oh, yeah. And then when are they deciding who wins?
Well, I think over time we'll decide it. And it should be, actually, we should have Robert Mueller in a mullet.
Robert Mullet acted out the left's fantasies of Trump's downfall. I like Alec Baldwin, but I don't like it's just not that funny. Avenatti, boy, wow, they do have all the winners here. Benjamin Wittes, Alyssa Milano, and Seth Abramson. This guy said something about me one time.
Really? On television?
Oh, yeah. Well, no, tweeting, and then he was all over Michael Moore from True Pundit for a while.
Robert De Niro, I mean, is fun to watch in certain movies and stuff, but the guy's an idiot.
You know what? I love Rocky and Bullwinkle, but when Robert De Niro was the fearless leader in the movie, that was clear to me that was a huge mistake for both Robert De Niro and Rocky and Bullwinkle.
Right.
So that wasn't a well-advised thing for him to get involved in, but that's the Mueller madness from the New York Post. Whoops. And there you go.
We could go to the next page, if that's all right. So I gather your viewership continues to grow and stuff, which is good.
Did I say Washington Post? I meant New York.
New York Post. There's a big difference. One is the paper of record, and one is used to wrap garbage.
I like the New York Post.
Right. But congratulations on your continued subscriber growth. It's important to know that this is a different approach for the new subscribers. This is not Jason and me lecturing you about how to see the world. It's trying to show you stories that we think are important, provide you links so you can form your own conclusions. We don't traffic in rumor. We don't traffic in, we certainly don't get the talking points from either side. Mm-hmm. And we just try to decide what should be important, what are the stories that are going to move and may impact your life, with a central focus being on exposing this Clinton Foundation charity fraud, pitching this to governments, really, and prosecutors and investigators and serious journalists, investigative journalists around the world. So we've just been doing it. We have a formula. We've been doing it almost twice a week on average. We've been doing it now for almost 2 years. And so there is a large body of work out there for people to consider. And it's interesting, I'm starting to get, overwhelmed is not the correct word, but I'm starting to get every day now new people coming out of the woodwork saying, would you tell us about this? And we're looking at that. And sometimes it's not related to the Clinton Foundation fraud, sometimes it isn't. I appreciate all those inquiries. If they're really directly focused to the Clinton Foundation, related to the Clinton Foundation, I will focus on them. If they're not, I can't focus on them right now, but I appreciate learning about it. And also what's happening is that people who've been trying to excite governments around the world to do things are much more interested now in going to the phase of they're beginning to see that maybe indictments are coming, and they're beginning to get ready to really pounce. So I think the sequence will be kind of like what happened when we had, maybe we should have Michael Smith on, because the last time we did that, right away things happened in Australia. We should all reach out to him. But
I tried to contact him while I was in New Zealand, but he was like deep cover.
No, I don't think he's in. I think he's in another country that we.
Well, I thought I would go to Australia, but
he's not there either.
Then that's the problem.
Yeah, you could go there, but he won't be there.
Yeah.
So anyway, there's a lot of information out there on the site there, and you can also. I try to be pretty active tweeter. Jason does too. My website is a way you can contact me. And as I say, I do try to respond to constructive thinking, and I block people who are interested in wasting my time.
Yeah, people get very upset. I mean, obviously, for everyone contacting Charles or myself or anybody, most people think the story that they're on is the most important story in the world. And if you have 5 most important stories, how do you choose? And also, we might not necessarily agree that
Right.
the importance is what they think it is. So I hope that people will have patience with that and not become belligerent, as they sometimes have a tendency to
Right.
do.
Yeah. Good. So perhaps without any further ado, I did another interview with the great Ekaterina Blainova. Perhaps we could hit this first link. And I have to say, I believe there's a 7-hour time difference to wherever she is in Russia. And this is, I want to say, the 70th, maybe more than 70 interviews. The way she does it is she sends me questions, and I attempt answers. And then she actually takes my answers and adds, transition paragraphs and things like that. And I'm very frequently other thoughts. And it's really impressive to me. Yeah, there's Anna Chapman.
What's she doing there?
Huh? I did a story where I mentioned Anna Chapman. And they really do, I think, a reasonable job of creating an archive of all these stories. And I enjoy reading some of their other stories. And I love I actually enjoy the way people react. You're in Sputnik? Have you lost your mind? No, I haven't. These people are actually doing journalism, investigative journalism. You should try it, instead of the absurd stories that come out of the New York Times and
Well, if you went on Rachel Maddow, nobody would say anything. But that is a real conspiracy theory. There was no, I hate to use the term because it's obviously a pejorative, but they made up a bunch of stuff and beat the drum for 2 years, and it turns out it's totally fake.
Well, and it's kind of like, I don't know if you have, I was fortunate, maybe fortunate or unfortunate, you'd be the judge. My parents, my father has 3 degrees, my mother 2, made a decision with we 3 boys that they would not, speak goo goo gaga little baby. They just spoke to us like we were people from a very young age. On the other hand, you see people who, when they have kids, they decide to speak to a 4-year-old kid. You've got to speak like a 4-year-old kid, and you quote.
That's Rachel Maddow.
That's Rachel Maddow. It's like you got to be kidding. Do Romper Room 2 and let her try to teach 4 and 5-year-olds. It's just crazy ass stuff. And it's not just her. It's that other guy, what's his name, Chris Hayes, and it's like they're talking to a 4-year-old who has not been to the bathroom yet today, and they just want to make sure that we can't have another accident. We can't have another, talking down to you as if you're the idiot, and they've just been spewing crap. They really need. I remind you that I ran into this very nice person at a Starbucks downtown who it turns out is a neurologist. And he basically flat out said that in his professional opinion, these people are clinically deranged. They're insane. They can't. They're just. Their minds have embraced a theory that bears no relation to reality, and they're just living in this dream world. And if you disagree with them, they have to harsh on you.
Can't the cops, there's like a 5150 or something where you're crazy and they just take you away?
But this next link here is interesting. We're beginning to see, and I think we're going to see an accelerant on this. Clapper, according to, I don't know how reliable DC Whispers is, but maybe it's very reliable. But the people who have who I think have been covering for Jarrett and Obama are beginning to get really scared. Because it's one thing to harsh on the president when you believe there is classified information that will dribble out that'll eventually get him kicked out. It's another when that rug gets pulled out by Mueller and Comey, and now you're Clapper, and now you're Brennan and these other people, and you're saying, oh, wait a minute, this guy's got 2 years left, and he's much richer than I am. And have you seen the people at the rallies? They're not exactly, saying, "Oh, turn the other cheek." Yeah. It's like, so I think we're going to start seeing now that the mainstream press has been humiliated, now that academia is under siege, It used to be that so-and-so from Harvard says X, Y, and Z, and you say, oh, it's Harvard talking. Now it's like, how much did you pay to get your job? Or what cut are you kicking back,
Right.
And of course, the Me Too movement has decimated Hollywood, so all the celebrities can't mouth off. And Donald Trump has, as I say, almost 2 years left. So
you mean 6?
Yeah, right, but 2 years to the most important thing. So you're seeing, I think, a shift in public opinion as the betters, people who have something at risk, have got to assign a higher probability to the likelihood that Trump might prevail. And so the last thing you want to do is live a continued lie, protect somebody like the Clintons, who is in the interest, I think, of the Democratic Party to flush them down the not-so-tidy bowl. And not ask any questions.
But isn't it too late for Brennan, Clapper? These guys have been so double, triple down. Like they just.
Well, they can they can beg. They can beg. I mean, these guys. I mean, right now, if you're somebody who's a bit player, I don't think that there's any leniency available for any Clinton. Right. I think there's a possibility, and this is just speculation. So I'll speculate. It's our show. For Brennan, I think there's a chance. The records that the CIA has of what they've done can be obtained, by Trump.
Really?
Right? Oh, absolutely.
I think that Nixon tried to do that and it didn't work.
Well, I know, but Trump is better than Nixon so far.
That's true.
Right? I'm saying he has a window here where he could really go in there, and if you decide that you could be expendable as this thing goes crashing and burning down, and you've got very valuable information, you have already been turned. You have already been talking, is my bet. And so at this moment, Senator Graham's, remember Graham and Trump were really, they went at it on the campaign trail.
Didn't they realize yesterday that Lindsey Graham somehow gave the dossier to...
There was something about that, yeah. Well, I mean, Lindsey was best friends with McCain. So,
I know, that's why everyone's like, oh, he's great. It's like, I still don't trust him. I don't, you can't, it was like his lucky rabbit's foot died and he had to come up with something else.
Well, he has Schumeritis, and he's just got to be in front of the mainstream cameras. But that said, I think the timing is good. And really, the biggest question I would ask, this is an excellent story here in the Federalist, that I think also Andy McCarthy has a similar piece.
Is this Lisa Page?
If you look at the title, it's further down. This is by Margot Cleveland, who's very good. And the real question is, how did this investigation that got started? In my piece in Sputnik, I provide the link to the Rosenstein order opening up the Mueller investigation, and the order does not specifically tell you why the FBI was opening an investigation. And we got to get into that. When did that actually start? Some have said that it started July 31st, 2016. I've heard others say that it started December 2015. I believe it likely started before the FBI was forced to open up an investigation into Hillary Clinton's mishandling of classified information, which was on July 10th, 2015. I believe that the Clinton campaign, they were, well, it doesn't matter to them, I suppose, that they were 6 or 7 months pregnant. But they,
at this point,
they're given the way they think about that issue. But they decided that she was going to run, and with the FBI opening up an investigation on the 10th of July 2015, they needed a counterweight, and that's, I think, why they paid off McCabe by giving money to for the campaign, and that's why they got McCabe into all this stuff, and they had Comey all the time.
But I don't think that payoff to McCabe was to motivate him to do this. I think they wanted his wife to take Dick Black's seat because he was already so deep in there. I mean, I can't believe that's, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Charles, but I can't believe that someone could be, so easily motivated by, even $1 million to put himself at risk of going to jail if that all.
Well, no, but they didn't think she was that she would lose. I mean, they were sure. They viewed. They wanted Trump in that window to be the nominee. They looked at Trump and they said, there is so much dirt on this guy, going all the way back, his rise in New York City. They figured they could get. They had multiple October surprises that would sink him. And I think in that moment they were probably even helping Trump hyping Trump, hoping that he would actually be the nominee.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, we're trying to figure out when did they have this counterweight Russian thing in their mind, and I believe we're going to find, if we really pull on these records, which we should be able to do, that it was way before the 31st of July 2016 that this all started. Now this next thing is, I don't know how closely you've been following what's going on in Sweden.
Well,
And in Norway.
I mean, we've been talking to Biljana.
Right, but with these banks. So
Well, I mean, only what I hear from you.
yeah. So this is really interesting that this Swedbank is a large bank in Scandinavia, but I think it's Sweden's oldest lender. And you know,
Whoa.
suddenly this money laundering stuff, this bank has been raided
By who?
by the authorities, government authorities, today, just now. And so why this is really important is that once you get on the inside of a bank, there's two ways to get banking records, right? You raid the foundation or you raid the bank. And the bank has a lot, these banks have a lot of records. And as a guess, the way this has worked for a long time is that the donor governments, the rich governments in the north and Scandinavia, Norway, Sweden, Sweden and stuff, UK, France, the US, Canada, they give money to ostensibly poor countries who then turn around and give portions of that money to foundations who then hive that money back into bank accounts to pay off politicians. So we now have, I think, we've had for some time, I think the Saudi Arabian decision to shake down those people, literally put them
upside down.
that got a lot of incriminating information about corruption out there. This thing, which is sweeping, it started in Estonia, I think, and then it went to Denmark, and then Norway, and now Sweden. This is going to spill back into Canada and Australia and the United States, anywhere, many places where the Clinton Foundation was getting government grants. So the probability, in my mind, as the tentacles of our investigation, there were many that we put in place 2 years ago. And there were long trails that people can go down now. And suddenly when you have the Swedish guys looking at stuff, and then somebody asking the Swedish development people, and somebody else asking the Clinton Foundation over here, you start cross-pollinating. And it's going to really come crashing down. So watch this carefully. Watch this I don't know if Swedbank paid for speaking fees for the Clintons. But we haven't even begun to cross-analyze, cross-check, how each speech payment, each big speech payment, how it came together, who really paid it, who might it have benefited, who could be
Other than the Clintons.
other than the Clintons and their Clinton enrichment scheme. I mean, their charity. So
I've always felt, Charles, that they were being so hard on Paul Manafort because they wanted to stick him in a hole, and because he knows stuff that would sink the Clintons and Obama.
of course, been in the center of the swamp for a long time, as is Tony Podesta, who's been very quiet. And then we have, let's see, this one here. The ratings, not so good.
Yeah.
This is just out today at 2:33. I mean, the ratings.
They seem to have elongated her head or something.
Yeah.
See that? They make her look like
It make her mouth look strange as well.
the opposite of a cone head.
Right. Yeah. But this is just withering, and it will not be long. It'll be very interesting to see how Saturday Night Live deals with this, because I think they're still in business, right? So,
Yeah.
no, they're going to definitely go here. Definitely go here. I mean, this. Think about it. This is. I mean, MH370 was it 370? MH370 was sad. That's only 50,000 comments in 3 hours?
From this?
50,000 views rather, and 287 comments
Right.
in that story there in about 3 hours. That gives you a sense of just how hot this story is.
What happened with MH370?
No. Just that MSNBC, which was on a tear because it looked like Russia hoax might succeed, suddenly people went, "This is garbage you've been saying for 2 years," and the ratings come in and they're toast. I mean,
Well, how did people not know when Rachel Maddow, she's like, "We have Trump's tax returns." It's like, "Oh, he made quite a lot of money. Congratulations." It's like, what? That's so stupid. I don't understand why she's still on television.
I think she should recharge her batteries, actually.
The rogue scholars.
Yeah. Then this we should spend just a second on. The Trump administration, on the one hand, has gone so far as to give a list, apparently, to various media producers saying, you really ought to not have these people on so often. And, I go back and forth on whether that's overreach or not. I mean, I suppose...
Yeah, I don't think you should do that.
Yeah.
They have a right to be stupid if they want, and then let people decide.
I would have put it a different way. I would have said, listen, we actually watch media carefully, and we have people we think do a good job, and they may not always be right. It'd be really super credible if they could find somebody who had done a story that was negative on Trump but well thought through, and just take people through the crazy people, the guests that really do seem to be foaming at the mouth and batshit crazy.
I don't really like this. I don't think that the president should be telling the news who to have on and who to not have on. I mean, this is a little dictatorial, know?
Right. Well, remember though that the president's team, I would argue that 90% of the producers, including many at Fox, are anti-disruption, anti the Trump platform, etc. So
they should send a memo to every camera manufacturer to not have this guy in front of any of their products.
Right. I think we should just send a warning out to all alien civilizations that this guy is definitely not our leader. So if you get lost in Iowa and you land in Iowa one midnight evening, and you start saying, "Take me to your leader, Americans," it's not that guy.
Why is no one asking Adam Buck why he's so focused on investigating Donald Trump but has done nothing to investigate mega donor / super predator Ed Buck?
No, can't say. But this is an interesting link here. We need to do a little bit more work. I need to do more work on this whole issue of the censoring that's going on. You've experienced it, I've experienced it. Even now when you Google search on the recent Mueller report, you don't get a lot of stories that are taking apart social media and Google and others for not admitting that they made a gigantic set of mistakes here. I mean, the allocation decision to allocate over 500,000 stories to this hoax. And we're talking about it in the Washington Post, in the New York Times, and the power that Facebook and Google have, and nobody's really. I start from the place that nobody really knows whether the metrics that Facebook and Google use are indeed.
No, because they allow all these fake accounts. Well, this is what I was going to say. I think that you're being too kind and letting them off the hook to say, how could they have made this mistake? I think they did this on purpose, and they pushed it until the very last minute, to where it was just totally impossible. I mean, this Jesse Smollett thing is the same type of thing. There's no basis in law for what this Ms. Fox did in Chicago, and it's going to be trouble. I mean, unless everyone involved in every aspect of the process is totally corrupt, something's going to happen there. And the same thing here.
Right. And I think it's a fair. I'm not somebody who, as I say, wants government to be overly involved in business, but the current regulatory scheme does not adequately contemplate the immense power of an Amazon, the immense power of a Facebook, the immense power of a Google, and politicians. I mean, they're even rich politicians don't have the ability to fight against this power. And I think it's going to take. Donald Trump incidentally had the CEO of Google in his office in the White House today.
Today?
He tweeted out that the meeting went well.
Wow, that's interesting. Because, Charles, Devin Nunes has this lawsuit against Twitter, which he's positioning on Sean Hannity as being censorship and First Amendment. That's totally untrue, because he's suing this journalist, Liz Mayer, for, in part, retweeting a headline from the Sacramento Bee, I think, which is like Fresno Bee, his hometown paper. It was an unflattering headline. She retweeted it, and now he's suing her. That's censorship, because a journalist is allowed to retweet a news article and not have the fear. I mean, she's already been punished, just like me, and coincidentally, Nunes is using the same lawyer. This journalist now has to hire a lawyer. It's going to cost her a lot of money to defend herself. I think this is a disaster from Devin Nunes and is not defending anybody's free speech.
Yeah. Yeah, I wish he had not gotten distracted. So Steve Bannon was asked what Trump's going to do after Mueller results are out, and he said Trump's going to go full animal.
I think that's a In-N-Out Burger reference.
Is it really?
I think so. I only ate In-N-Out Burger once. I didn't like it too much. You can order like coded items from the menu, and it's all kinds of different style burgers. But he looks like he's been to In-N-Out Burger recently.
Yeah, I don't understand this scruffy look at all. I mean, I just don't get it. But
this is like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Yeah, I don't get it.
I mean, he's got a bit of an image problem, and I think cutting his hair and shaving before he is photographed
might help.
Yeah,
but he's very, very smart.
Larry Nichols is still convinced that the Democrats are going to impeach Trump.
They may try. They won't convict him.
That's what I said.
And then here, this one. I mean, we got to let this person. I think you should offer her a show, AOC. I mean, this is just. She's flipping out now that they forced the Senate vote. 57 people voted against it, and 43 people just voted president. This is on the Green New Deal in the Senate.
It's a non-plan. And I mean, look, I want to discuss this in a way that we're not disparaging Ocasio-Cortez, because let's for a minute journey into the land of crazy. I mean, bringing it up was inspirational. And one of the things that was said at that press conference yesterday was that now there's a conversation about it. Okay, that's fine. They're comparing it to when JFK said, let's go to the moon. But it's different, because that was the early 1960s. Jet technology was new. They were just constantly innovating in the area of flight, breaking the speed of sound. It seemed like the logical next step. Here, there's no proposed technology that's remotely close to logical or doable. It's just saying, we can do this, yeah. Do what?
This is more like when Jackie Gleason said, you know.
Chef of the past. Hey.
No, said, to the moon, Alice.
Exactly. There's just no plan. I mean, I would have felt much better about this if she had identified some technology that needs, support or whatever, and say, we're going to use this to reduce emissions by 25% in the next 10 years, or something realistic.
Well, but just to go, a plan this stupid would make it out of her mouth. I mean, you would look and you would say, all right, the entire net worth of everybody in America is about 100 trillion, maybe 110 trillion. And what we want to do is spend 90% of that on a plan to destroy the country immediately. Right?
I love it, what you just said, the fact that it could make it out of her mouth, like the competition among stupid plans within her mouth is so stiff that you can barely make it out.
And then this Michigan rally, I bet you, I don't know, obviously I have no inside information, but what a treat it would be if Trump could somehow convince Jeanine Pirro to go to this rally in Michigan.
What's happening with Judge?
I haven't heard anything. I sent her an email saying, give me a sign of life that you're okay.
I think we have her phone number, but we shouldn't
call
her.
No, I'm not going to. But this will be a treat. And of course, Trump will be on tonight at 9 with Hannity. I'm sure he's already taped it. And that will be very interesting to see what Trump has to say and what tough questions Hannity may ask, and then the various guests.
I mean, to be fair, Hannity doesn't really ask him tough questions.
That's true. Sometimes.
It's like two guys hanging out.
But this rumor down here, this one.
Oops.
That Trump may do the White House Correspondents' Dinner on April 27th. I mean, that is going to be, if he does that, I mean, the ratings on that will be through the moon.
Huh.
Right?
Well, because it'll just be him up there making fun of everybody for this.
Right, but remember he took a lot of grief when Obama did the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and he refused to go, and they did one of these things that was just all nonstop Trump, and then he's going to be He'll have the speech. They won't have the speech. I mean, I will certainly watch that one.
Yeah, that sounds really good.
So, anyway, that's good for some elements in the media. So it's important. We're going to keep to the 2-hour goal here. There's a lot of detail, but I'm going to fly through it. I try to organize this in a way so that people who are new to this will be able to see where we're going. But I'm also introducing some new ideas for people to think about here, which make this fraud even more obvious. So we've talked about in the past, going back to the early period after Barack Obama won his historic victory in November 2008, several days after that, this lawyer writes a memo, and it's addressed to Bruce Lindsay, and it's ridiculous. I mean, it's a Doug Band memo. It's like, it's a memo that says, I'm so stupid, I'm going to write down all the crimes that my client has committed and make you, the CEO, aware of it. And this is the memo further down. That's Bruce Lindsay when he was young, and the memo is right here.
A better photo of him than we usually see.
But people can get this memo. You can read it. Real lawyers can read this memo, and you're going to say, why would you ever write a memo like this? That is there's clearly other versions of the memo out there. They clearly limited her review. It says, I believe, that she did not do any work in the international operations, stuff like that. But even with the caveats, this is a memo that shows that the Clinton Foundation had knowledge. The CEO of the Clinton Foundation, the man who would sign the memorandum of understanding with the Obama transition team, had knowledge that his foundation, the one he was CEO of, was a complete fraud, that he had that knowledge. It's going to be kind of tough to say, well, I couldn't understand the memo. Well, you're a lawyer, right? You're still a member of the bar. You're of counsel to a law firm. And you were the CEO of this business, this entity.
Lindsay is a lawyer?
Yeah.
Yeah. I like it that you said real lawyers can read this, because fake lawyers can read it also.
Right,
There's
exactly.
a lot of them out there.
Yeah, there are a whole bunch of them. They hang out on the boxes on the sidewalk here,
No, they have offices in Virginia. They're
Exactly.
representing members of Congress. They're quite busy.
So she signs that MOU 6 days later. She signs an MOU that the Clinton people, Lindsay signs it as well, later, absolutely knew was wrong. The whole basis for this arrangement was wrong. The Clinton parties knew that the thing was a fraud. They knew that it couldn't operate in the key places.
Is Valentine a lawyer also?
She's also a liar. I mean, a lawyer.
It's crazy.
She's both. So they signed this thing. 6 days later, she couldn't possibly, to be charitable, have done a lot of time and diligence on this thing, I don't think. There is some confusing language in one of the books. I forget whether it's Halper's book or Schweitzer's book, claiming that Cheryl Mills, of all people, may have advised Valerie Jarrett, on how, whether on this MOU, which makes no sense. I mean, Cheryl Mills
is
is
a lawyer?
Huh? Yeah, she's a lawyer.
Wow.
It's amazing. But the point is that Mills is a Clinton person and was on the board of the Clinton Foundation. So
clearing out Vince Foster's office before the federal investigators could get in there.
Right. And so here's something remember, this is a period where Hillary Clinton, we don't really know yet when it became obvious that she was going to be the Secretary of State. My suspicion is that was on the table in June of 2008. We don't know yet. But the reality play that played out was towards the middle end of November 2008. Rumors started circulating she'd be Secretary of State. She was announced as Obama's candidate at the end of November. And then by the 12th of December, reliable BKD, you can count on them to screw up your accounting, issues a fake audit for 2007 that is not compliant with U.S. accounting standards, plainly not. And that's the same day that the transition team, the Obama transition team and the Clinton Foundation decide they're going to make the memorandum that's going to regularize relations between the Obama administration and the Clinton Foundation and the Clintons, or just the Clinton Foundation. That memo, the MOU, is effective on the same date that BKD issues a fraudulent audit. Okay? To compound that fraud, 3 days later, the Clinton Foundation causes its agent a fake. I don't think it's a real firm. They have lawyers in it, but they're not authorized to practice law in key states where the Clinton Foundation is operating. They send a letter which is of course not on the Clinton Foundation website, but you can get it in the New York State Charity Bureau, across state lines, saying we need more time to fill out our paperwork in New York State. Remember, Hillary's the junior senator from New York State, going before the Senate to be confirmed. Kind of awkward if in her confirmation hearing she had to say, well, actually my husband and I have been running this fantastic fraud. That's how we have all these homes. That's how Chelsea has her expensive apartment that she's going to get. That's how we live the way we live. Kind of tough to go make it through your confirmation hearing. So the approach they take, I would argue, and the FBI agents, if there was a grand jury, there were subpoenas, so you look at this hard, you would discover, I believe, that the Clinton Foundation purposefully gummed up the works in New York State to make sure they didn't appreciate, and in other key states like California and I think Michigan and other states, to make sure that this fraud, elements of the fraud, wouldn't leak out through the regulatory apparatus, through concerned people, prior to Hillary getting across the line. And then on the 13th of January, they set up a new email domain. And here, all of this work that Horowitz has done and we see that other people have done focuses on traffic over the clintonemail.com address and another one. There are multiple domains that they were using way before the 13th of January 2009, going all the way back to when Bill was still president. You've got to look at all of that email traffic. And it's possible to get all that email traffic, if you're the NSA, if you're people who really want to examine this, as opposed to the FBI under Comey, which was the Federal Bureau of Idiocy at the management level. It's like, if there's no fraud here, that would affect me.
But the NSA almost never reports on any of that stuff because, according to Bill Binney, they want to confirm that they have access to everything. So, what are they doing with it? They just hold on to it and then...
My point is that people who really wanted to find out what was going on with this Clinton Foundation could easily have done so by now.
Yeah.
So she goes before the Senate. She and Barack, they're both, I don't know if Barack had resigned from the Senate by this point, but they both were senators, and it's supposed to be the most exclusive club in the world. And you're going to go before your fellow senators, and you're going to make a central argument to why she should be Secretary of State. Remember, she had no international experience other than being First Lady.
Being a U.S. senator is the most exclusive?
Yeah, but it is one of them.
Well, Skull and Bones.
Not as Skull and Bones, never was.
I didn't say you were.
Yeah.
I'm saying it is, though.
Maybe not. Maybe.
More people have been U.S. senators than Bonesmen, haven't they?
I don't know. We
anyway,
digress.
next topic.
So the 13th of January, she lies in her confirmation hearing. She postures the Clinton Foundation as being a force for good, all her husband's good works. She glosses over, obfuscates the conflicts, tries to claim that she will behave and this MOU is really going to work. And the reality is it's not going to work because it's set up not to work. It's not a legally enforceable document. She begins her tenure as Secretary of State on the 21st of January 2009, and they're right at it. The Clinton Foundation, they file a false and misleading 990, or report for 2008 and 2009, another fake BKD audit for 2008 and 2009. They rinse and repeat in 2010 for 2009. And then by October 2011, Simpson-Thatcher begins a review that they characterize as being a 10-year anniversary. The thing was founded October 23, 1997. If you want to do a 10-year review, you'd be doing that in 2007, not 2011.
Well,
so it's
not that good with math.
Right, exactly. So the big question before the audience here, before the investigators, how many freaking people around the world have known about this fraud and said, I'm just going to get in and I'm going to hold this fraud over their heads to get more out of them? How many people have done that? And now that this is going to come crashing down, who are going to be the first people to try to cut a deal? Because the first ones in my bet, are going to cut the deals. The ones who come in, as let's say the first 100 people get indicted, person number 101 is not going to get such a great deal.
Right.
So this is an interesting thing that I found in the last 24 hours. It's an IRS. Don't hit the link if it's okay. People can do that later. It's an IRS link that says, okay, we're going to give you some of the questions where people who try to get federal tax exemption fall down and it doesn't work. So please don't make these mistakes. I just highlighted a few. One is for your corporation not to be in good standing, like having your authority to operate in a state like Massachusetts involuntarily revoked. That's not good. Or not even ever setting up in a state, also not good. Or using the wrong addresses, very bad. A new one is that corporations, from the 21st century, you need to have articles of incorporation and bylaws. Bylaws are how you operate the corporation. Articles state what it's organized to do, basically.
They give you a binder.
Right. And so if the bylaws are missing by the time you file your application, you're not going to get approved, right? We're going to show you in certain cases, 3 cases, that the bylaws were missing. Yet Lois Lerner allowed Clinton Charities to get determination letters anyway. That's not allowed.
Doesn't the state make that? I remember, it was a long time ago, but I just filled out a thing and they said, okay, here's your corporate package and that's it.
Yeah, it's different for charities. It's a little bit more different. I mean, it is a process, but the point is you're going to pay corporate income taxes. In a charity, you're saying, I don't want to do that. Right? I don't have to pay corporate income taxes. I don't have to pay property taxes. I may, in the old days, I get discounted postage, and there are other benefits, and my people who give me money, investors in your company, if you had any, outside ones, they don't get a tax deduction for giving you money, but people who contribute to a charity, give you money to do what they get a tax deduction. So you've got to get this all right. If the bylaws are missing, it's a problem. If the bylaws were not adopted, then you were never organized. So you can't say that you came into existence on October 23rd, 1997, but you get around to doing your bylaws in 2004. It doesn't work that way. It's an ixnay, right? So, and then this is interesting. You have to submit all board minute meetings for the current and past year. And we see in that Kamiki Gibson memo, she says there were no minutes, right? So, it's crystal clear, as we've been saying for months now, almost years, that everyone who knows anything about charity law and the regulations and accounting knows this is a fraud. So the real question is not, let's jump all up on the Clintons alone. It's, you got to jump on the regulators. Why did the regulators give these Clintons a pass and Obama a pass for so long? And why did they jump all over conservative and right-leaning groups in 2010? We're going to show you new angles on perhaps explaining why they did that. Now, I would like to just highlight this thing that I did in the past. This is a link to something that explains in relatively succinct terms the key issues, the do's and don'ts, but most importantly, this all-encompassing operational and organizational test. It's in simple terms, when you set up a charity, it actually has to exist legally. You have to pick a place where you set it up, and you have to go through the formalities of filling out all the forms that are required on a timely fashion, and you got to actually make sure the thing does exist. You have the right number of directors, you've done all the fine detail that needs to be done, and then there's the operational test, which just means you got to comply with all relevant law when you operate the charity. You stand in the shoes of government. You're not Joe Blow and the Acme Axle Company. You're selling axles. You're pretending that you're part of the government. So you better not break the law.
Cash and checks is much easier.
Right. Yeah. So if you go to the next page, we begin the process of asking whether the 3 parts of the Clinton Foundation complied with these rules. Now remember that I'm a redist or anti-red. Anything in red is not good, right? So this page, this is the biggest piece of the Clinton Foundation, the Clinton Health Access Initiative, by far. Overwhelming majority, over 90% of all grants in 2007, 8, and 9 key years went to something or ascribed to something called Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS Initiative or Clinton HIV/AIDS Initiative, right? So remember I said organizational test, operational test. In the Clinton Health Access Initiative was something, go over here, it was formed maybe on the 29th of September 2009, right? But it's rooted in an organization that was formed maybe, and I say maybe because in order to form it properly, you would have to prove that 3 or more directors came together and formally adopted the Articles of Incorporation, and at the same time, those 3 or more directors actually adopted bylaws, and that you were a corporation in good standing, and you had the authority to do what you said you were going to do, and that you'd made all the proper disclosures. I don't think Bruce Lindsay did this properly on March 24th, 2004. I believe the records will show once the FBI with a grand jury starts looking hard at this that they tried to get tax exemption and failed. So to cover that off, they created this fake merger where they said, we're just going to take this thing we created and merge it back into the parent, and now we can still do what we want to do. But then somebody said, you don't actually have the authority to do that. So they said, Andrew, I've got a new name for him. His middle initial is M. So it's Andrew Messel, we're going to call him now. Andrew Messel says, what we'll do is we'll go down and we'll file a form with the Secretary of State, and we'll just make up a name. We'll say, we're going to use this Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS initiative. So that's what they do on January 3rd, 2006. And Massachusetts, which is where all of this activity was headquartered.
His house with the Weber grill.
Right, they look at this and they say, ixnay, man, you can't do that. You can't do this anymore. And our magaziner says, I'm with the Clintons, I do what I want. So they keep on doing what they're doing. So with this background, a lot of bad things that they should have told the IRS, they should have told states and foreign countries, all these things which would have disqualified them from actually operating this Clinton Health Access, they nonetheless form it, again, improperly. I don't think they came together at a board meeting and all the directors came together. They file a false application for federal tax exemption using the mail. It's crime, felony.
Yeah, I know.
And then they claim that they have a merger affected with this Clinton Health Access Initiative, basically takes the Clinton HIV/AIDS initiative, bits and pieces, into the body of this new entity. They claim that that happened on January 1st, 2010. But here's a new piece of information I have not shared now that the Mueller thing is over. We have people around the world who are have been combing through the archives, various places. One set of people have been doing this in the Bahamas. On the 3rd of February 2010.
Sorry, Charles, you've just caused me to think of something. January 1st, 2010, isn't that also a holiday? How could this have happened then?
That's what good point. They claim they structured the merger to be effective as of the date, January 1st. Now, I hate what are called as of deals. I like, and those where all lawyers think they can get really smart. You work way past January 1st, 2010, and you say, well, let's just say the deal happened back then. That eliminates the pressure to get everything right before you close. Where the old-fashioned way of doing it is, no. When you get all your paperwork right, then we'll sign, and then money changes hands. If you sign up for these as-of effective deals, then the lawyers and the accountants and the consultants and the fraudsters
working on it forever.
Right? Yeah, they'll work on it forever, and you'll never really know what you did. And you also your alarm bell should go on. If you're not in such good shape that you can do this the way I like to do it, then why am I doing this? Yeah. Right? I'm just getting involved with the mess. So, but the key point here, though, Jason, is that we have filings in the Bahamas where a lawyer in the Bahamas, two lawyers in the Bahamas, committed fraud in the Bahamas, saying that the things were, the chai was in a certain place where it was. But importantly, the only place where we've seen a signed version of these new chai bylaws is signed on February 3rd, 2010 in the Bahamas, or for the Bahamas, right? Which means that between the 29th of September 2009 and the 3rd of February 2010, they were operating without bylaws, which means they failed the operational test, which means they should never have gotten federal tax exemption. But what happened? On the 15th of March 2010, IRS department under Lois Lerner says, you're with the Clintons? Obama's the president? We're going to torture the Tea Party people. Welcome to being an IRS federally tax-exempt charity. And also in this application on the 31st of December 2009, as we've said before, they say they're not a successor organization. This thing that had been operating since 2002 is not a successor organization. And to get even more aggressive, the notorious BKD issues the audit, in quotes, for this entity in 2011, the audit for the period 2010, and in the audit it says this entity was established in 2002 by President Clinton. President Clinton was not an officer of the Clinton Foundation at that time frame. He had no legal authority to establish it. But here you have two contradictory pieces of information that the IRS had access to. And it's straightforward. You can't both be right here. You either were a successor or you're not a successor. And if you are a successor, they didn't fill out this application. You're supposed to say every country where you operated, every portion of every country. What's your history? No, it's all blank.
And if you're not a successor, it sure is a coincidence how similar the name is.
Right, exactly. So I mean, you look at this is why I say when you talk, as I now have done to many experienced lawyers, I don't get a chance to get much past, this is obviously a fraud. How come these people aren't in prison? And my answer until very recently was Mueller, obstruction of justice. Trump can't do anything about it.
Right.
So if we can,
next page,
it'd be great. Okay, then we have this other thing, which is interesting. The same. This is the. This is the same BKD purported audit. I didn't put the date in, but it's dated sometime around, I think it's June or thereabouts, 2011. This says that on January 1st, 2010, this Clinton HIV/AIDS initiative transferred, quote, all of its activities. How could you have done that on January 1st, 2010, when none of the registrations for Clinton Health Access Initiative, Inc. were done properly at that time? How could you claim that you concluded this transaction and allow your firm to issue this audit in 2011 into the public domain and keep it circulating? It's an obvious fraud. It's all wrong. And this thing was issued just before the renowned firm of Simpson Thacher was brought in to study this. I mean, it wouldn't take very long to look at this and say, you guys, you're committing fraud here.
It's O.J. Simpson and Thatcher.
So, and they say that they're affiliated with this thing called the William J. Clinton Foundation, Inc., which doesn't exist. There's no such entity by that name. And then they talk about how this Clinton Foundation was supposedly raising money on behalf of CHI and creating something called the CHI Fund. You're not allowed to do that, right? None of this is allowed. And this CHI was not like in 2009. It's not like it was 2 cents out of 200 million. It was a gigantic percentage of the whole thing. And they take the old thing and they say, well, we're going to put it into this new CHI, and we're going to give Bill Clinton and Ira Magaziner 2 of the 4 seats on the board and set it up so that they have the power, that is, the Clinton Foundation has the power to appoint at all times 4 directors, and that the board could be shrunk down to 3. So you're basically concentrating power in the hands of Bill Clinton and Ira Magaziner, gutting the idea that this is a public charity. You're not allowed to do this.
I have a serious question, Charles. So this is the 152nd show, and they're about 2 hours each. Why is it going to take the IRS or the FBI more than, say, 304 hours to investigate this? Just conclude.
For us to talk about it is one thing. For them to investigate...
But to just get the documents, I mean, it's like figuring this out took months.
Yeah.
Now that it's laid out, it's like just go verify is it true or not, and then you're done.
Well, that part of it's done, but then you have to think through the strategy of which charges to bring and in which courts and which ways and which people to go after first, and what's the sequencing of events, and how can we make this a stronger case by getting people to turn, and opening the grand juries. I mean, there's a lot that had to be done, I think. But I think you're right. With all the stuff that people have been saying, I've been at this for 3 years. It's actually I've completed 4 years of this, I think. 6, 7, 8, 9. This is the 4th year.
So you're looking at maybe 305 hours.
There's a tremendous amount out there, but there was, we see it in the Jussie Smollett thing, right? You got somebody dead to rights, but if you got a crooked prosecutor who says, oh, no, you skate. It's a Smollett syndrome for the Clinton Foundation.
And now they've introduced something that's going to require some huge process to go through. That's how they do it. They initiate something, and even if it's wrong, it's like, well, now we got to undo it and all this.
Well, and I think also when Trump started on this, remember, the Republican who was going to be taking on Hillary Clinton was going to be Jeb Bush.
Yeah,
right.
Well, so it would have been hand in glove with him, right?
Right. Well, my point is so that here the people who are fighting Trump are,
powerful,
virtually all Democrats, and the Bush family, which has been recently depleted. But so it was quite a heavy lift. And if you're sitting there as a functionary, thinking on the one hand, if I play along and go along, I could spend 20 years in the FBI and then get a job in the security department of some big company and
investigating computers,
right? Exactly.
And finding nothing,
exactly. But making a lot of money in the process, and my wife could get a cushy job or whatever.
Run
go
for
that
state
way.
Senate in Virginia,
or what I think I'll do is I'll take on Barack Obama, the Clinton crime family, and the Bushes.
Yeah.
It takes
a special
some guts.
Yeah.
So if we look at the next page, we're going to turn our attention to another fraud. This is that Clinton Global Initiative. We've done show after show on this thing, but the high points, they hold something they call the Clinton Global Initiative, September 2005 in New York, with no authority to do that. And then Andrew Messel files another application for a fictitious name. Now remember, what a fictitious name is, instead of using 21st century 3D, you could file the right to have a DBA or a fictitious name.
21st century 3D is a DBA.
All right, so you can get another one. You could, and that's in essence what they do for a for-profit company. But for a not-for-profit company, you're committing fraud when you go out and you say, I'm not going to change my articles of incorporation to give myself the authority to hold a gathering of grifters in New York, where government people and people who are on the make who want to get deals done will go behind in a closed setting for chump change for these people, 20,000 each, to sit in a room for 3 or 4 days and listen to people yap and then forget all that stuff and just find the deals you can do and the bankers to fund it. And the best thing is it's tax deductible. I mean, that is not charity. It's obviously not charity, and they had no corporate authority to do this, but they started doing it September 2005. This should say 2008. I had the wrong, for some reason the type was too small. It should be 2008 there and 2008 there. It's 2009 there actually. But CGI Asia held a meeting in Hong Kong after the election, after Valerie Jarrett signed the Memorandum of Understanding. Here are all these grifters in Hong Kong in the transition.
Foaming at the mouth.
Well, and we're going to give Mike Flynn and Jeff Sessions a hard time for meeting the ambassador of Russia. This is a grifters meeting in Hong Kong, that went ahead after Valerie Jarrett signed the MOU. It's ridiculous, it's preposterous that they did this. But it was probably a setup for, Hillary Clinton says now she's going to be Secretary of State. Here's, probably a way of laying out the prices for getting whatever you want once Hillary becomes Secretary of State. On the 13th of January 2009, they grill Hillary Clinton in quotes about conflicts of interest, but don't get very far. Oh. And then on the 4th of September 2009, Bruce Lindsay, again, the same way it was done with Clinton Health Access Initiative, by himself incorporates this Clinton Global Initiative, Inc., which I don't think is the right way of doing it. President Obama addresses this 5th meeting of the Clinton Global Initiative. How do you have a 5th meeting of something that was just started 18 days ago?
They're busy.
No, 5th annual meeting.
Oh.
Right? And it's impossible.
Compressing
time phone hacker, whatever. Yeah. So then they amend their articles on the 30th of June. Again, I don't know that they do that correctly. Prior to then, on the 26th of April 2010, Bill Clinton accepts a role as honorary chairman of this entity that's a joint venture partner with this entity that doesn't exist. And he ultimately collects $17.6 million, and nobody cares. Right? They should care.
That's a huge sum.
But remember I said this whole issue of they start this thing on the 4th of September, but it's not until the 4th of August 2010 that CGI bylaws appear to have been adopted. And this may not even have been done properly. They're dated 4th August 2010. They're signed by Bruce Lindsay, but there's no evidence that a majority of directors signed these bylaws. And there's every evidence that the activities of the Clinton Global Initiative were not separate and apart from the Clinton Foundation. The Clinton Foundation controlled all this stuff. So I don't think, again, I'm not a lawyer, and I have actually high regard for the lawyers of Simpson Thatcher, but the team that was looking at this was told, don't write down the real problems in any memo, because this is obviously a fraud here. They should have reviewed this. There are obvious conflicts of interest. Doug Band is centrally involved in this Clinton Global Initiative. Meanwhile, he's building up a consulting company, interacting with people in the grifters' rooms, and manifestly benefiting to tens of millions of dollars. His firm is anyway. So they filed this fake application for tax exemption, the IRS, on the 9th. They hold another annual meeting in New York where again President Obama speaks on the 23rd of September. And Tea Party people are getting nailed, right? They're getting tortured by lowest earner people. But, look, determination letter, you've got nothing right, nothing's right, no board minutes, no conflicts disclosed. It's not really a charity. It's a business development exercise. Bill Clinton's getting rich, Doug Band's getting rich, Hillary Clinton eventually will get speeches. Bill's, coining money in these speeches that are derived from some of the people participating here and getting side deals, and who knows how many deals Chelsea Clinton was getting and friends were getting. It's not complicated to see that this element is a fraud. So are those the only two pieces of the fraud? No.
I'm going to guess no, yeah.
All right, let's talk about the Clinton-Bush-Haiti Fund. All right? Now this is really, in some ways, both sad and funny. It's sad, the Nobel Peace Committee announces Barack as won on the 9 October 2009. In order for him to have been nominated, I think they only considered a period of scant weeks, right? Because they have, in other words, you have to put the nominations in, and then there's a deadline for getting them in, and it might have been end February, stretching the truth, end March 2009. The guy's been president for less than 2 months.
Right, hasn't done anything.
And it's become a participation trophy or whatever, Oh, you're the first African-American president. Nobel Peace Prize, why not? You want an Academy Award? Give you one of those. Whatever you want, it's absurd. And he gives a speech on the 10th of December. The earthquake devastates Port-au-Prince on Haiti. The next day, the Clinton Foundation, it had no authority to do disaster relief, even though they'd done it for Katrina. They secure the domain Clinton-Bush-Haiti Fund on the 13th of January 2010. Now, when do you think the first entity was organized, the Clinton-Bush-Haiti Fund was organized?
I guess January 20th, 2010.
Right. So for 15 days, they're out fundraising for an entity that doesn't exist. They're taking money, in theory, at the Clinton Foundation over the internet, and they do a public service commercial. ABC promotes it. If you just Google Clinton-Bush-Haiti Fund and date restrict it to January 29th, 2010, and before, you'll see many stories. I just put a few, but here by the 18th, they're saying that they've using text fundraising off your phone.
Oh yeah.
They raised $20 million in 2010 in 5 days. A portion was for CBHF, which didn't exist legally in any shape or form. By the 23rd, 5 days later, they raised $57 million. There are other stories that say they raised hundreds of millions in this time frame, but they only get around, in theory, to setting this thing up in Delaware on the 28th of January, 2010.
H.W. Bush was never a lawyer, right?
No. Nor was the W.
Well, so maybe these guys have they know the law so they can work out more elaborate schemes, and HW is like, I want in. We're just selling cocaine and stuff. This is way more complicated.
No, I mean, this again, there's so many lawyers around. Bill's a lawyer, Hillary's a lawyer, Chelsea's not a lawyer, but she's got more degrees than Bill and Hillary combined, or close to the same.
But there's a lot of lawyers who like to use their knowledge of the law to come up with scams. I mean, look at Avenatti. Although you would think if he knew anything about the law, he wouldn't have done that.
Right. Well, this is where it gets very interesting, Jason. On the 10th of March, notice that the entity is not organized until, in theory, the 28th of January 2010. Let's hit this link here and show this is hard evidence. This is a correspondence. This is Barack Obama signing something on March 10th, 2010, telling the Norwegian Nobel Committee, if you go down slowly, this page, notice here, I will donate the proceeds of this awardee to charity pursuant to Section 74B3 of the Internal Revenue Code. And he wants the Nobel Committee to send the money directly to 10 charitable organizations. So the accountants who are maybe watching this, we need to dive into this 74B3. This, I think, is you get a check for, call it $1.5 million, whatever it might have been. Instead of taking it in to your income, By 74B3, I believe what you do, there's maybe a way for you to have the charity just send the money to other charities, right? But the rub in that, as a guess, and people will be checking this, is that you can't send a significant portion of this to something that doesn't exist.
Oh.
Now, let's see if that's what happened. We go to the next page,
Oops.
slowly. All right. Clinton Bush, he directs this Nobel Prize Committee or Nobel Committee to send it to the Clinton Bush Haiti Fund of the Clinton Foundation. No such thing existed legally. This address, 610 President Clinton Avenue, which is not the official address of the foundations, but note the instructions. Note that the donation should go to program expenses for Clinton Bush Haiti Fund, not for administrative expenses. And it's going to a bank account here.
Yeah, SWIFT codes and everything.
In Arkansas, okay? But the Clinton Bush Haiti Fund, as you'll soon see, I don't put the bank details, never in theory had a bank account in Arkansas. It was operating in theory in Washington, D.C., which we're going to show you it wasn't even doing that right. Okay? So if we keep going down the page here, to the next page, next several pages, you see the next page after that. Here's coming back from the Nobel Prize Committee, confirmation. On March 18th, they transfer the entire proceeds directly to the following charities. You can go down the list: Clinton Bush Haiti Fund of the Clinton Foundation on March 18th, 2010. How could you have done that? An electronic wire transfer to an entity that was not a charity on that date. How did you do that?
Fake bank account.
Well, the point is that there are records, and the Nobel Committee, and we are already reaching out to various elements of the Norwegian government. There's a record here. It says here in this letter, sent across national boundaries to the former President of the United States, I took your money as instructed, and I donated it to this thing which didn't exist. I haven't checked the other places. The Posse Foundation sounds a little bit suspicious. Maybe somebody will check that one. But I could say right away that the $200,000 of the money that went to the Clinton Bush Haiti Fund of the Clinton Foundation, there was no such entity. And the Clinton Foundation had no authority to operate it, and they didn't register to solicit properly anywhere for it. But there's a bank record of an electronic transfer. So when was that money sent? And into what account did it go? And what happened after that? These are things the FBI can figure out. Now, if we go to the next page, this really gets astounding. Back into the slide. First we have, they may be signed amended bylaws on the 19th of March 2010. Remember, this thing was set up 28th January 2010. They only submit an application for federal tax exemption after they have received money, lots of money, from the public and from Barack Obama. They only get around to filling the application in after they've gotten a lot of money. I mean, that's a serious problem. Generally speaking, what you do is you should not solicit money on the basis that it's tax exempt before
until you're sure you have the exemption.
Well, until you actually have the exemption, as some people say, and it's risky to do it before, once you've filled the application in, but before you know whether you're going to be clear. It's super risky to be soliciting money for something you believe is a charity that is not organized, that has not even filled out the application for tax exemption.
You're just exposing yourself to criminal fraud.
But now this is bad enough. They issued the determination letter on the 28th of April. Let's look at the next page. Okay. If we hit this link, we've put this story up before. This is one of the many stories I've done on this. But for people who are curious for detail, and I had somebody tweet, and it kind of pissed me off a little bit, and why don't you do something written? Why are you putting up all, I was like, maybe you should watch our show, pull down some slides. But there's a lot of information. This is this Clinton timeline. There's tremendous amounts of information written on this. But this is a story that if you want to get to the bottom, the big points on the Clinton Haiti fraud, it's all here for you. If we then go back into the slide, what website is that? Clinton Foundation? Timeline. It's a very big timeline. So, let's see. Oh, I didn't put the number in here. I'm sorry, but the Clinton-Bush-Haiti Fund declared, I think, total revenues, incoming grants of about 40 million. Okay, but the Clinton Foundation says, this is from yet another masterpiece from BKD. In 2010, the foundation received 62.9 million and sent 57.4 million to Haiti. But the Clinton-Bush-Haiti Fund only claims that they got around 40 million all in. So 40 odd, maybe it's 48 million. So they got less in this Clinton-Bush-Haiti Fund than the foundation, the Clinton Foundation alone, got from its various donors. How did they do that? You know, where's the paperwork in New York? Because they have addresses in New York. Where did they, you know, file with New York to change their purpose, saying they're going to do this stuff?
How'd they carry around that much cash?
But it says Clinton-Bush-Haiti funds were established. This is in a filing in New York State in August of 2010 by two public charities. I would argue the William J. Clinton Foundation was not a public charity.
Because the Clintons controlled it.
Right, and well, and all these many infractions. So to put this, yet another false filing into New York State, and they claim that they made grants, the Clinton Foundation and others made grants of $4 million. I mean, you look at this filing, it's total rubbish. And that's before you go to the next page. Now, I have not tried yet to go through each donor to figure out where they sent the money. Now, there's nothing other than red print on this final page, because every one of these things is a serious problem. The main office of the Clinton-Bush-Haiti Fund, according to multiple marketing materials, was only one office.
Little Rock.
Washington, D.C.
Oh.
That's where they claimed they had a bank account. So if you're
wasn't it supposed to be in Little Rock?
It was supposed to be in Washington, D.C. So we start at the very beginning. We check the D.C. Department of Consumer and Regulatory Affairs to find out, did the Clinton-Bush-Haiti Fund ever have an authorized office in Washington, D.C.? And the answer is no. By effective 17 March 2010, just the day before, I think the Nobel people sent money to Arkansas out of Barack Obama's prize winnings, they withdrew their D.C. office. So they had no D.C. office. Obama says, send it to Little Rock. They had no authorized office in Little Rock.
Throw it in the street in Little Rock.
Communities Foundation of Texas sends $4.6 million to, look at this address, 2550 M Street, Washington, D.C.
What's up with that?
Well, you'll see a little bit further down below, state filings say one office used was 2445 M Street. This is this issue of, we had that postman problem, though you use the wrong addresses, you have a lot of things that sound similar. Okay.
But I mean, how are they going to deliver the mail? What's the purpose there? Just to...
Well, how do we even know that that's where they really sent it? The point is they're putting down, there should be no wiggle room. In New York State, you have to list out all of your offices and branches and affiliates, right? And they say in New York State, in their filing, that there's one office, and it's in Washington, D.C. Okay, they don't talk about anything in Little Rock. They certainly, so this is Communities Foundation of Texas claiming that by June 30th, 2010, they'd sent $4.6 million to someplace in Washington, D.C. Bill Clinton's foundation claims that they sent $37.2 million in cash and $3.4 million in non-cash to a post office box in Baltimore, okay, which is not registered with anybody. That's the bulk of the money went to a post office box in Baltimore, and we have high confidence. I mean, last time you sent a vehicle to a post office box, that probably worked out really well. Right? It must have been, yeah, exactly. How do you send a car to a post office box? How do you send $37 million to a post office? It must have been one big box.
Isn't it a check, or are they actually sending money?
I don't know. Again, we don't know, but the one thing we do know, this declaration that they were sending money to a post office box was made in 2011 concerning 2010, but it was reissued when they amended their 2010 return, November 16th, 2015. They said it again, we have to repeat our felony. We're going to tell you again, this is what we did. And then Communities Foundation, for the year ended June 30th, 2011, they claim that they sent $366,000 to a different post office box in Boston. Again, that's not declared anywhere.
So this seems to be a pretty standard technique, having post office boxes that aren't your real address, changing the address often.
Changing the name, so it's
Why
slightly
do people want to do that?
because if you've got a crooked bank that is in awe of a celebrity, Bill Clinton or whatever, you hear, oh my God, your bank teller in some small branch in some part of Boston or Baltimore or whatever, and somebody comes in and says, the president's going to, would you like to meet the president of the United States? As a favor, he'd like to have a bank account
And
for
cigar.
his charity. His charity. It's a charity, right? What could go wrong with
So
it?
people are thinking, oh, we can't even...
Yeah, and it's got to be, big chief Elizabeth Warren, with her headdress on. I mean, she's all high and mighty about regulating banks. She ought to be high and mightier about regulating charities. Well, the only office that was may have been validly organized for the Clinton-Bush-Haiti Fund was in Dover, Delaware, where they had their initial office, 3500 South DuPont Highway. None of these other offices were actually validly organized. And I haven't begun, as I say, to cross-check, where did this donor to the Clinton-Bush-Haiti Fund in its 990 or PF form, where did they claim, because you have to put the address where you sent the money, what address did they claim they sent their donations to the Clinton-Bush-Haiti Fund? So why I bring this up, people always ask me, why is it taking so long to get this fully exposed?
Well, D.B. Cooper just said he thinks that you're closer than ever in all these years you've been closing in.
Oh, that's good to know. The real D.B. Cooper?
I think it's just a YouTube name.
Thank you, D.B. But the point here is that this is the kind of work that the FBI is renowned for doing when they really want to do work. It's very straightforward stuff. You have a list, you have a grand jury, you have the power to really put the fear of whatever you fear into you, and to coax information out of banks, out of law firms, particularly out of accounting firms. Coax these books and records out. What addresses did you send donations to, thinking they were going to this relief effort? And this particular reason, to bring this up before November 2000, the election date, November 8th, 2016, and open this wide up, you would be embarrassing Obama, the Bushes, the Clintons, and you have an election with Donald Trump. So of course, if you're a political animal and you think that Trump is going to win, you're going to say, well, let's bury this, and maybe the statute of limitations will pass. I don't want to think about what's going to happen if Donald Trump gets to be president. Maybe we can, convince him not to look at it. You just bury it. You put such a big problem, because you're talking about Barack Obama and his people, and maybe he doesn't care about money. It's possible.
Well, he just got $65 million for
But before that, I'm just saying, but maybe he wouldn't be, maybe he's the kind of person who says, well, I'm going to have to get a tax bill here of like my entire tax return for 2010. And I think he wouldn't be upset about it, actually.
He would?
Oh, yeah.
But I just think he's crooked as any of them.
Well, again, remember, he's running a foundation, and he's trying to make a big deal of his own foundation. So this, you're centrally involved in this fraud. It's not just going to be that...
He doesn't want to distract from his own fraud.
Right. Well, once you bring up the subject of charity fraud, and you then say, about this idea that presidents, when in retirement, they're not going to actually have to worry about anything because they can just milk a presidential library till the cows come home. And once you say, nah, that's not the way it's going to work. And then you say, actually, Bill, if you want to be a lawyer, not that either. You're not going to be able to do that.
You got to not break the law.
Right, that's not going to work so well. You can't run for president again. Suppose you could run for mayor of New York. You might be able to get that. So
you could move to California and advertise legal weed.
That's right. You could be a spokesperson. Yeah.
Don't inhale.
But I do get the sense that, and I'm glad, Jason, we've been had this opportunity to do all this stuff together, that it really was a major league opportunity for us to get all this stuff out there before anybody knew what Mueller would come up with. And now that we know there is no Russian collusion, mainstream media has destroyed its credibility. And don't you dare call me a conspiracy theorist.
Right.
Just don't even try to go there.
Because the things that you and I and the guests I have on my show with Ole Damagard and Larry Klayman and Dr. Corsi and run through the whole list that people say are conspiracy theories, we actually have strong evidence to support these theories. Theirs was like a fairy tale theory is a better word.
That's an insult to fairies.
Exactly.
It's just it's the stories you tell. When you're so drunk that you think you're getting sober again. That's basically what.
It's almost like a steak will shoot out across the train, land on the carpet.
Steaks on the plane.
Steaks on a train. That is great. People other than Michael Moore will not get that. Is there another page?
That's it.
Oh, wow.
We've reached my page limit.
Huh. Well, all right. Sometimes Charles is dropping coded messages throughout the show, like "We will finish on time today." Is shut up, Jason.
No, I just want to.
I know. I'm teasing.
You've been traveling.
Well, you're right, and I'm pretty tired, but I'm delighted that we were able to do this today. It has been an honor, and we're not done. There's still more of this stuff. We're going to keep closing in until the door closes. I would like to go visit Bill and Hillary in jail someday. I know most people think they're never going to go there.
Yeah, I think, well, if history is any guide, what they will try to do is they will try to negotiate a settlement.
Fake their own death?
I don't think, well, they'll try to negotiate a settlement without having to confess the full extent of their crimes. And they'll pick fall people. I think Andrew Messel, if he is not already cooperating with, with the authorities, and Eric Braverman, if they're not already doing that, then they're really stupid.
And then what about stuff like Benghazi and all of that? That's a whole separate issue, obviously, but...
Well, that's all going to come, now that we have a lot more, I guess, did we not talk about, did I skip over on the second or third page the Turkish stuff?
Yeah, we didn't talk about Turkish stuff.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's all right. There's always room for turkey jello.
Yeah, maybe I didn't have it on here, but there was a Zero Hedge story about how Turkey is blowing up, and maybe I cut that. But Erdogan has threatened speculators, including J.P. Morgan. That's good to know.
Look at that. Yeah. They're investigating. I tell you, the FBI is investigating a lot of stuff.
Yeah. If you go down the page a little bit.
That just came up.
Yeah. It's already got 27,000 views.
Second. Wow. Roundup. Where are we here?
Whoa, what's this?
Man arrested in plot to assassinate Trump.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. I thought I heard there's something in West Virginia.
Yeah. Totally committed to the U.S. military. Google is committed to the U.S.
Well, they're doing work. That's why they're doing work for our enemy, China, the Chinese military. Whoa, mushroom cloud in Ukraine. I mean, it's amazing. Somebody was giving me grief for referring to Zero Hedge articles. I think it's fantastic.
They're definitely culling a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, they do good work. Well, anyway, there was a story about how Turkey is in the capital markets in Turkey are in turmoil, and it is in a credit market event where Turkey would go bankrupt. Erdogan would fall from power, and when he falls from power, his son would be exposed for the crook that he is. There have been many stories about his involvement in smuggling and Benghazi and all of that. So I think it's taken time to open up the multiple fronts that needed to be opened up under all these crooked people around the world. But suddenly everything is crumbling around these different people. And at a certain point, your self-preservation instinct says, I'm certainly not going to sign up, as General Custer goes out there, I'm not going to say, yeah, General Custer Clinton. Why don't you run for president? Third time's a charm. You're going to say, no. I got my insurance policy. Anthony Weiner's probably got some good stuff. Other people got some good stuff, and you come crawling into whoever it may be, Joe DeGeneva, if you don't want to go directly to the government, people close to Trump, and you say, my client, you get a lawyer to say, my client might be willing to give you something like this if my client can get something like that. And I've got to believe those discussions are ongoing.
They gotta just stick him in jail, Charles. Well, people seem pleased that Monsanto is losing lawsuits, which I am too. Like, I don't understand how you can have a Green New Deal without talking about stuff like that. I mean, you can just get rid of carbon dioxide, but continue to pollute the water table and the soil we grow our food in. That Green New Deal is a stupid plan. And Kirsten Gillibrand was like, yeah. Go away. Anyway, Charles, I want to thank everybody for watching and remind our viewers that Crowdsource the Truth is sponsored by you. I could not go to Washington, D.C. and make Gillibrand look silly without the support of the viewers, so I hope that people will go to subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. $10 or more, you're going to get that Sunday with Charles screensaver. People can still go to paypal.me/crowdsourcethetruth. I'm going to be speaking with Laura Loomer tomorrow. She was in Woodland Hills where Ilhan Omar had some sort of a meeting with CARE and all that. And this is going to shock you. They threw Laura out.
They threw Laura out. She's like, who was that Peanuts character with a football? It was Charlie Brown with a football, right?
Yeah.
What are you going to do today, Laura? I think I'll get thrown out of here.
I forget where it was. I think it was Barnes & Noble where the Bill Clinton, they threw her out before she even got up there. And she was like, I don't care. I've been thrown out of much better places than this. It's really funny. But, you know, we love Laura. We don't want anything bad to happen to her. But she's over there stirring the...
Maybe she'd have more luck. Isn't there that guy? Who's that guy who's an expert at crashing things? There's some guy, they write about him, you know, who's crashed all kinds of events and not the Salahis. But you know, there's some guy who spent his whole life doing that.
I saw some show on an airplane one time about like somebody who knew where there were like business lunches happening in hotels, and he would just like go in there and like go to the buffet and leave. Anyway, Charles, we'll see you on Sunday.
Looking forward to it. So welcome back.
Thanks for watching, everybody. See you tomorrow.